Hey guys, Kino here. This is the start of a new series I'm doing. Don't worry, the other series, like the Twin Peaks series, aren't going anywhere. On this channel, I usually talk about films that are critically acclaimed or have achieved a cult status of some kind. Sometimes I've championed films that might have received lukewarm or even bad reviews because I personally loved those movies and thought that the critics of the time were simply wrong. The thing is, critics are people. They're prone to human errors, and they usually criticize movies based on their own personal biases and the culture of their time. That doesn't mean that the films that they either praise or lambast might garner different reactions from audiences down the road. That's why I'm starting this series. I will be revisiting some movies that were critically reviled, and my goal is to see whether the critics were right or wrong in their original assessments. I think every movie deserves a second chance, and so that's what I'll be giving to these films. Feel free to disagree with what I may think about these movies. I know that since the consensus on these films is overwhelmingly negative, I might be going against the grain a bit, and I'm not opposed to the fact that others might not share my same opinions. If we all had the same opinions on every movie, then the world would be a pretty boring place. The rules for this video are simple. The movie has to be certified rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, meaning that a majority of the critics dislike the film. For this specific video, I'm focusing on films that can be classified as comedies. Bad comedies can be extra bad. With something like a bad horror film, there can be unintentional comedy that makes the movie fun. If the comedy movies aren't funny, then they're just grueling experiences. There's a film that I'm revisiting in this video that has a 1 on Metacritic. That's 1 out of 100, not 1 out of 5. I'm sure that'll be fun. For the first film in this video, let's revisit a film that has a whopping 13 on Metacritic and 10% on Rotten Tomatoes. However, it's a movie that, in recent years, has achieved a sort of renaissance, and some people claim that it's a misunderstood comedy classic. That's right. Let's begin with Freddy Got Fingered. But before we start, a quick word from our sponsor. We live in a world of impersonators, AI, and bot accounts. How can you be sure that someone is who they claim to be online? How can you be sure that I'm the real Kino and that I wasn't Paul McCartney'd? Well, Fudo's new app Harbor solves this problem. It gives you a sovereign identity and uses a public-private key system to verify which accounts are actually you. You can even use it to verify other things like job titles, achievements, or weird facts about yourself. It's easy and, more importantly, free to use, and it's available on both iOS and Android. Who knows, it might save you some headache down the line should someone make an AI-generated version of you to help sell, gosh, I don't know, crypto or ED pills. Also, while you're still here, this isn't part of the sponsorship, but next month, June 29th to be exact, I'll be filming a talk with True Detective creator Nick Pizzolatto here in Austin, Texas. There are tickets to this event, which I have linked in the description below. It's happening on my birthday, so I don't know, maybe come and celebrate my birthday with me?
The MPAA gave this movie an R rating. That's definitive evidence that the MPAA ratings board is morally adrift. And what is the most disgusting film of 2001? On TV, we can't show you the scene where Green swings a newborn baby around his head.
If a woman was doing that, this movie'd be banned in Tijuana, let alone getting an R rating.
Chances are you've probably seen Freddy Got Fingered, or you've at least heard about it. You might have heard people say things like, "Hey, would you like some sausage?" Or,
"I have a bag of jewels for you."
You might be one of those people who sent my friend Simeon Jimmy a DVD copy of the movie. Seriously, thanks to some of you, he has like a whole shelf of those DVDs. Why was Freddy Got Fingered made? Was it a rebellious act against a studio in which Tom Green took their money and made what amounts to a feature-length shitpost? Was Tom Green hoping that it would elevate him from TV comedian to comic movie actor superstar, possibly filling the hole Jim Carrey left when Carrey moved on to more serious projects? If his goal was the latter, then he failed. I mean, it made it onto Roger Ebert's most hated list, with Ebert saying this about the film: "This movie doesn't scrape the bottom of the barrel. This movie isn't the bottom of the barrel. This movie isn't below the bottom of the barrel. This movie doesn't deserve to be mentioned in the same sentence with barrels." Oof, that's rough. Freddy Got Fingered would also go on to win 5 Razzies. In true Tom Green fashion, he showed up to the awards, brought his own red carpet, and played harmonica until he was dragged off stage. Honestly though, the Razzies suck. I'm glad that Green annoyed the hell out of them. I've seen this movie a couple times at this point, but when I try to describe it to people, I'm often at a loss for words. What is it? It's an anarchist parody of the gross-out comedies of the late 90s and early aughts. It's a nonsensical and absurdist portrait of an artist as a young man. It's a movie that attempts to offend anyone and everyone in the audience. It's a movie that doesn't care if you like it. In fact, part of me thinks that it wants you to hate it.
The nature of the movie that I made is from day one when we started writing it, said we wanted to win a Raspberry Award. So I'm glad my dream has come true.
It's like Tom Green saw the line that he shouldn't cross in a studio comedy, and not only did he cross it, he remained firmly on the other side of that line for the entire movie.
You mean I shouldn't blow the brains out of the back of my skull?
No, you shouldn't blow the brains out of the back of your skull.
Every scene in here is tailor-made to provoke a reaction, whether positive or negative. It wants you to be disgusted. It wants you to get offended. It wants you to have no idea what the hell is going on. And yet, that's part of the charm. I can see why it wasn't received well at its time. Many people in the generation before me still don't really care for the film, but I think that the movie has aged better than many of its contemporaries. Looking back on it, the absurd comedy of the film feels like proto-internet humor.
I'm the backwards man, the backwards man, the backwards man, the backwards man. I can walk backwards fast as you can.
The jokes might have been seen as meaningless and nonsensical back in 2001, but meaningless and nonsensical jokes are our bread and butter today, so it makes sense that although Freddy Got Fingered didn't appeal to the Gen Xers, it has found a place among younger millennial and Zoomer audiences. The movie actually feels somewhat experimental and avant-garde. It forms a story out of skits that are only loosely related to each other. Almost every character plays their role as over-the-top as possible, with Harlan Williams of all people playing as the straight man. Now, usually the straight man is the central character of the comedy, with the side characters bringing the humor and eliciting funny moments out of the straight man's reactions. Not in this case. Williams is relegated to a side character who we hardly ever see. The first time we see him, he breaks his leg on Gord's skate ramp, and then Gord proceeds to lick his wound while Jim, played by Rip Torn, yells at them. This movie follows the structure of a comedy about a man beating the odds and finding success in his field while also getting the girl.
I sold my cartoon. My dad said I couldn't sell my cartoon, but guess what? I sold my cartoon!
But this film turns its form on its head. He does beat the odds and he does find success, but that's only because his abusive and crazy father trashes the cartoon studio while the executive thinks that it's all part of the pitch. And then he gets his show aired on TV, but the movie doesn't end there. No, Green then shows us how Gord blows all the money he made, whether it's because he bought expensive jewels for his girlfriend,
I have a bag of jewels for you.
or he and his dad airlifted to Pakistan.
Surprise, Daddy! We're in Pakistan!
And while in Pakistan, they get arrested by some kind of guerrilla group and live as prisoners. There is a happy ending though, as they triumphantly return back home, not as estranged people, but as a father and son who love each other. I guess his dad forgave him for falsely accusing him of child molestation.
You're gonna pay! He's a molester! He's a child molester! Ah!
And speaking of the girl, Betty, the doctor, she's the prototypical gorgeous blonde who's also very smart. She is an amateur rocket scientist. Green, in his own weird way, makes fun of this trope by making her wheelchair-bound and also hypersexual and kinky. The sex scene between them involves Gord whacking her legs with a bamboo stick while she reacts ecstatically. Her goal in life is just as seemingly insane as the rest of the film. She wants to create a rocket-boosted wheelchair. What's the purpose of this? Going fast. I love how Gord takes things so literally in this movie. He's like an edgelord's version of Amelia Bedelia. When the exec tells him that he needs to get inside the animals to understand them and come up with a better story, Gord rips open a dead deer and wears it as a costume. Betty tells him that he needs to eat and play music to relax while drawing and writing. So he devises a contraption that holds sausages on strings while he plays the keyboard. It's a movie that, to enjoy it, you just have to go along with it. I understand if this film might not be your cup of tea, but I find it hilarious.
That's all my money gone. There's $1 million gone. No, easy come, easy go.
My verdict on Freddy Got Fingered is that the critics were dead wrong. They just didn't get it. It's playing on the Criterion channel now, so, you know, it has some class.
No, easy come, easy go.
Oh my god.
I was saving this trick for later.
Oh my god. Oh my god! Oh my god!
I don't know where to start with this one. Dirty Love released in 2005 and garnered a Metacritic score of 9 out of 100. I honestly think the critics were wrong. It should have been a score of 0. If there's a possibility for a movie to have a negative score, then this one should have that. Let's get the technical problems out of the way first. The cinematography is atrocious. The harsh lighting and terrible camera angles make it seem like this film was shot by a college student, and that might be unfair to college students. The score sounds like it was sourced from a royalty-free music website, and the structure of the film is so cliched that it hurts. What's the movie about? Rebecca, played by Jenny McCarthy, finds her boyfriend cheating on her, and so naturally she breaks up with him and plots revenge. Her revenge plot involves finding another guy to date so that she can make her ex jealous. The film consists of a series of misadventures as she dates a number of men, ranging from super Jewish movie producers who feel like anti-Semitic stereotypes to a crazy magician.
A beautiful salad for a delightful lady. And the rabbit.
Every guy she dates is just so wacky. But of course she learns that John, the nice simp guy who has been by her side the whole time, was the one she should have been with all along.
You are gorgeous.
I would put a spoiler warning here, but I'm begging you not to watch this movie. To quote an IMDb review that I read, this would make a great movie to recommend to someone you hate. And I don't hate any of you. I love you all. I'm trying to protect you. I don't want you to feel your soul get torn out of your body because you're watching a movie this bad. Ask my friends. After I finished this, and I have no idea how I finished it, I just sat in silence for 15 minutes. I was an empty husk of a human. The movie didn't make me feel anything. It made it so that I could never feel again. I knew this film was going to be bad right from the start. It opens with Jenny McCarthy having a meltdown on Hollywood Boulevard, and then she goes and talks to a fortune teller. That fortune teller is played by Kathy Griffin.
You have to learn the lessons before you can ride the white pony.
I don't need to say more. So why did I even watch this film for the video? I'm asking myself that same question. Initially, it was because a subscriber of mine told me that this was a terrible film in which Jenny McCarthy tries to make a kind of female Freddy Got Fingered, so I thought naively that this would pair well with the previous entry. I suppose I was right, but being right didn't mean that I had to simply watch a movie. It meant that I had to undergo 90 minutes of torture that should be banned by the Geneva Convention.
Well, that just sucks. Well, it only gets worse.
Aside from all the other problems that I've listed, there are 2 key issues with this film. Jenny McCarthy can't write, and she can't act. Put those together, and you find out that she's just not very funny. But hey, plenty of actors and writers aren't funny, and that's okay. We need people to make dramas and horrors and all the other genres that aren't comedies. The problem is that, in this movie, she thinks she's really funny.
Oh my god!
So what we get is 90 minutes of her being so try-hard that you just can't bear it. It doesn't help that none of the actors can seemingly act.
I'm not believing a word you're saying.
Well, duh, that's because I'm acting.
I mean, I see quite a few things on your resume, and I think, how could anybody have ever hired you?
It's a 90-minute parade of some of the worst talent that Hollywood has to offer. I stuck it out though, because even with the worst movies, I try to find something good in them. I want to be able to say, I didn't care for it overall, but I did like this thing or that thing. Most films have at least one thing going for them. I watched intently to find that one thing. Maybe I'm just blind, but that one thing was not to be seen here. Not even the random Sum 41 music video clumsily spliced into the middle of the movie gave me any joy. But maybe that's because I'm not a Sum 41 fan. She really heavily leans into the gross out comedy here, but it doesn't work. Her running through the grocery store while she's having the biggest period in the world elicited no laughs. While watching this scene, a stone-faced Solar Sands walked into the living room and asked me, "Is this supposed to be funny?" I responded, I think it is. There were no laughs in my house. Not even a slight upturn of the sides of our mouths. Not one little glimmer in our eyes. We just watched in pain. The choices for humor in this movie just baffle me. The joke about Carmen Electra's character is that she thinks she's black.
We could all kiss Richard's stank ass goodbye.
Rebecca has to wear giant maxi pads. A guy throws up on Rebecca's boobs. The sign on one of the doors says "Quite please" and not "Quiet please." You know what? I think that was just an error. Believe me, I'm trying to think of what the other jokes were, but considering that this movie didn't get a single laugh out of me, I can't recall what were supposed to be jokes. I think this film made me forget what jokes even are.
Rebecca, I'd like you to meet our dates for tonight.
I want to read an excerpt from Roger Ebert's review of the film, in which he gave it a thumbs down. On the basis of Dirty Love, I am not certain that anyone involved has ever seen a movie, or knows what one is. I would like to invite poor Jenny McCarthy up here to the Toronto Film Festival, where I am writing this review while wonderful films are playing all over town, and get her a pass, and require her to go to 4 movies a day until she gets the idea. I've seen a lot of bad movies, but this might take the cake as the worst, or at least one of the worst films I've ever seen. It's not bad in a fun way. Don't watch this movie thinking that it might be so bad that it's good. Just don't watch this movie. I wouldn't even call this movie slop. I mean, that's giving slop too much credit. Slop at least gets you through the day. Watching Dirty Love is like eating rancid raw bacon. It tastes bad when you eat it, and next thing you know, you've got tapeworms in your brain.
The movie is not merely bad, it's incompetent and embarrassing, and anyone in the audience, I'd say anyone, could make a better movie than that.
The next movie is considered one of the worst, if not the worst film of all time. It sports a very rare 1 on Metacritic, meaning that almost every critic gave it a 0 out of 10. This film was even lampooned in the Weird Al song Albuquerque. Alec Baldwin told his brother Steven that this film would ruin Steven's career. Kylie Minogue, still, to this day, regrets her role in it. That's right, we're talking about Biodome.
And remember, here at Biodome, we're dependent on balancing homos within the system.
I sat down and expected the worst. This somehow got even more panned than Dirty Love, so it had to be that much more worse. But you know what? I didn't think it was as bad as its reputation has made it out to be. Maybe I'm just being charitable because I had just watched Dirty Love. Here's the thing. Unlike the previous film, Biodome actually feels like a real movie. The cinematography, though not spectacular, is up to studio standards. The acting is also generally passable for a film like this. It didn't strike me as the worst of the worst, but rather as just a dumb stoner comedy from the 90s. I don't think that it's any better or worse than a lot of Pauly Shore's other films. I get it if people don't like Pauly Shore. Sometimes he comes off as obnoxious, and his verbal mannerisms are definitely not for everyone.
Link and I are cruising the mountain, bro, and we figure we's a little ooze.
There's nothing really highbrow about Biodome. The jokes are juvenile, focusing on weed, smelling each other's farts, being horny, throwing parties, and much of the humor comes from Pauly Shore and Stephen Baldwin being menaces to society. Depending upon the kind of person you are, you might find their antics funny, or you might find yourself siding with the scientists and just find them annoying.
Simeon? Dick?
What I will say is that this film is very realistic in one aspect. It shows what it's like to live with a pothead.
The one with the corn.
The story of this film is pretty flimsy. A couple of moronic stoners accidentally get stuck in a biodome because they think the dome is a mall and they're trying to take a piss.
There's gotta be a toiletry around here somewhere.
The dome seals and they have to spend a whole year inside.
52 weeks.
Yes.
385 days?
Yes.
They invariably drive the scientists crazy, and somehow they turn on the women scientists. They also become overnight celebrities. However, their environmentalist girlfriends are on the outside, and so there's a bit of relationship tension there. Surprisingly, the stoners end up getting on the bad side of everyone, and so they escape the dome, only to return to it to throw a huge party, which compromises the dome and causes the investors to want to shut it down. Knowing that they screwed up, they rally the scientists to hold out and fix all the damage they caused. The stoners have small character arcs. They start off as guys who don't care about the environment, and they end as guys who actually do care about the environment. They save the day and reunite with their girlfriends in the end. For all intents and purposes, it's a fairly by-the-numbers stoner comedy. Don't try to approach this with your thinking cap on. If you start to ask questions like, how did they manage to throw that huge party with a rock band and costumes and get hundreds of people to show up with almost no planning, then this movie will fall apart. The story, the setting, and even the side characters, they're all just props and set dressing to showcase Pauly Shore and Stephen Baldwin's goofy escapades.
I mean, just because we're stuck in a bubble doesn't mean we can't cause any trouble. We're the everlasting force!
It almost feels like a skit show that's set all in one location. If you don't like this style of humor, then you definitely won't like this. I've got to admit, though, that it did get a few laughs out of me, which is more than I can say for most modern comedies. One thing in the film that did annoy me was its weird use of music. When Baldwin would start doing some sort of kung fu or karate or his own version of those things, music would just harshly cut into the audio track to make his flailing feel funny.
Girls want to get physical.
It didn't work. Let's look at some of the critical reviews from its release. The LA Times. Shore seems convinced that the antics of his retarded persona amount to some manner of postmodernist anti-comedy, and this makes resultant boredom seem all the more pathetic. Mr. Anderson, I don't think you're allowed to say that word. The Washington Post. A non-stop marathon. Biodome offers a pantsload of poop and masturbation jokes, deviant innuendo, and simian psych gags destined to gross out and offend just about everyone. And now a review from someone who didn't give it a 0. Entertainment Weekly. Even with the low expectations any reasonable viewer brings to a Shore flick, this rates only stupid plus. The bongs and pajama set, though, should be riveted. I actually think that this is a fair assessment. The reviewer gave it something like a 4 out of 10, which I think is probably closer to correct than an outright 0. When I think of a film being a 0 out of 10, I think of it being a non-film, a film with absolutely no redeeming qualities. As I said earlier, I think that the technical prowess of the crew makes this movie feel like a real film. A dumb film for sure, but a real one. All in all, it's a movie made to be watched stoned. I'm not a stoner, so maybe I wasn't able to enjoy it on that level, but I kind of enjoyed it as a weird 90s time capsule. The environmentalist angle in it is shallow at best, but hopefully it taught America's stoners to not litter and pick up their garbage. Were the critics wrong about Biodome? I think that they correctly identified it as a bad movie, but I also think that they were a bit too harsh. If this is a 0, then where do films like Manos, The Hands of Fate, or Birdemic fall on the spectrum? If I were to give Biodome a rating, I'd probably give it a, 3 or 4 out of 10. Not the worst, but not very good either. It's definitely not as good as Encino Man. Now that is some Pauly Shore Kino. Okay, now I know this next movie is a bit of a meme. It's a film that I remember playing on cable all the time when I was a kid, so I've seen parts of this movie several times, but I've never sat down to watch the whole thing until now. We're talking about the sequel to the 1970s horror masterpiece, The Omen, Problem Child 2.
Junior, try to be polite. We're his guests.
Okay, Dad.
I remember finding this movie funny as a little kid, but I made the mistake of watching it again as an adult. I should have just let it stay a nice memory. Now I just question the taste of 5-year-old me. The movie takes place after the events of the first film, with Junior and his dad moving to Mortville to escape the town in which they used to live. Junior has trouble adjusting to the new town, as so many of the people in that town are jerks, and his dad is going on dates with women, thus not giving all of his attention to Junior, who really just wants to spend time with his dad. Junior does his best to be a little shit and sabotage his dad's dates. He informs the date's ex-husband about her romance with his dad. He projects his babysitter's makeout session with her boyfriend on the side of his house for the whole neighborhood to see.
I didn't do it, I just watched it.
Yes, and so did the entire neighborhood.
I didn't hear any complaints.
and he even electrocutes one of the nice ladies who just wants to have a nice evening with his father. Eventually, the town magnate Lawanda, a rich and powerful woman with a weird southern accent, digs her claws into Ben, Junior's father. She wants to marry him and send Junior off to military school. Basically, she's a prototypical evil stepmother. Junior tries to warn his father about her, but he doesn't believe him.
She's different from all the others. Lawanda is bad.
Junior, you think all women are bad.
And thus, Junior is the boy who cried wolf. Now, Junior has to find a way to make sure they don't get married. The poster for the film implies that the movie is about Junior teaming up with another problem child, Trixie, who is advertised as even worse than Junior. But that second point doesn't really come across in the movie. Naturally, they have a short rivalry before they become friends to show off their individual capacities for mischief. But Trixie's brand of mischief seems to boil down to the fact that she likes to carry M80s everywhere, and she likes to give inappropriate puppet performances at the school. I'd say of the two, Junior is the more devious. Now, one of the biggest issues with the film is the fact that so many of the child actors just aren't very good. And this is concerning for a movie in which kids make up half the cast. Now, the dialogue also isn't the greatest, so maybe they were just working with what they had, or maybe the direction was just bad. But, you know, it's really tough to get a good performance out of a child, and the director failed to do so here.
I'm not gonna fill it up. Why don't you go fill it up? I'm not gonna fill it up. Why don't you go fill it up?
I know some people say that children are never good actors, and I disagree. Go watch Where's the Friend's House, L'Enfance Nu, and The 400 Blows, and you'll see that great child performances are possible. The other major issue with this film is its tone. Its slapstick comedy is inherently mean-spirited. Junior never sabotages or attacks anyone unless he's provoked, but it appears that almost everyone in this town is a total asshole.
Being a principal's great because I hate children. I bark and they do what I say.
The filmmakers try to make us root for Junior because his victims are just getting what they deserve. But you know, if they acted like regular people, then this film would be a horror, not a comedy.
What's the matter? They afraid you go pee-pee in your diaper?
Some of the gags are kind of funny, but the movie wants to be this heartfelt family comedy that ends with a message about the importance of love in the nuclear family. It's a good message, but it is a weird message to have in a film that's about a little kid torturing everybody around him. I mean, he causes several people on a carnival ride to puke all over each other, and he ruins a dinner by unleashing cockroaches in the dining room. Yet somehow, they have a happily ever after, and the two families come together as one. Oh yeah, the woman that Ben Healy ends up getting with is Trixie's, you know, the other problem child's mom. We see them at the end, walking together and happy. But all I can think is, man, they just made all their problems worse. I think that military school might have been good for Junior. Or maybe not. It might just turn him into one of those soldiers who really wants to go to war because he just wants to kill people. I think for Problem Child 2 to have worked, it needed to choose a side. Wholesome family comedy or sadistic black comedy.
And here's my science project. I'm innocent.
It straddles the fence post between the two, making it feel unfocused and confused. The pacing here is also a problem. It takes over half the film to get into the major conflict, so it has to wrap up its central conflict, which is Lawanda trying to marry Ben, in a very short amount of time. I know that it does introduce Lawanda early on, but she doesn't play much of a narrative role until much later. Also, the relationship between Lawanda and Ben brings an end to the feud between Junior and Trixie. They each get about one prank pulled on each other, and then they become friends. Their fast friendship doesn't feel earned, and comes across as just a necessity for the plot, as the filmmakers had to wrap everything up in less than 90 minutes. While I'm ranting, why did all the women in town think Ben was such a hunk? Like, he's not bad looking, but never would I imagine a normal dude like that would have a whole line of women at the front door just begging to be screwed. To the women in the audience, is he actually that hot? Am I doing something wrong? I mean, there's never been a line of women at my front door. I mean, there's really never been a line of people at my front door, thankfully, but never women. Let's see what some critics had to say about this film. From the Washington Post, Junior Healy, Michael Oliver, Problem Child, and the movie's best argument for infanticide is back, and no one is more surprised than I am. This is one brat, and one bratty movie that's nearly impossible to tolerate, much less like. From the Orlando Sentinel, Problem Child 2 may be the most sheerly repulsive kiddie movie ever filmed. From the South Florida Sun Sentinel. If you take the family to see this deplorable excuse for a good time at the movies, then parents deserve what the kids will learn. This reminds me of something I wanted to bring up. It's obviously a movie made for kids, but it is PG-13. So who is this made for? It's too edgy for kids and too mature for teenagers and adults. But hey, maybe I'm the dumb one because it took home about $25 million at the box office, which is equivalent to about $63 million today. And it probably made a killing off its run on cable television. I guess I should understand, as when I watched this movie as a little kid, I just thought the slapstick and gross out antics were funny. I didn't think about it too hard, and I did not care about the story or the characters or the messages at all. So were the critics wrong to dismiss this movie? I don't think so. I mean, I don't think it's a good movie. I did laugh a couple times, but the bad child acting, weird pacing, confused tone, and cliched story elements keep this from being good. But hey, I mean, at least it's short. Now, on to the last film in the video. This was a movie that I recall seeing as a kid. It was a movie that my family rented from Movie Gallery, and I watched it and I forgot about it. I hadn't given a single thought to this movie for many years. That is, until I started making YouTube videos, and I gained one very strange subscriber, Vin Love. If you followed me on Twitter, you've probably run into him. I first encountered him when he spammed my DMs with fake art house posters of his favorite film, Son of the Mask. I thought that it was all a joke, a forced meme, but I came to learn that no, he actually just passionately loves this movie.
This is Tim Murray for Southern Ass, for real. I just want to say to Peter, Kino Corner, I love what you're doing. I love your videos. Mwah. I love you.
His love for Son of the Mask wasn't shared by anyone at first, but now I can see that that love has spread. He's gone from being a lone fan to a cult leader. He would be the kind of guy to make every Son of the Mask fan drink the Kool-Aid, and then after they all died, he would just say, "My bad." But it got me to thinking, was this film that I brushed off as a kid actually good? I know the saying that every movie, even the worst films, is someone's favorite movie. But maybe there's something else to this one. I bought the DVD a few months ago, mostly as a joke, which then caused Justin Silverman from Screenwave to tell me that he knew that he unfollowed me for a good reason. My innocuous action seemed to have hit quite a nerve. Watching this film went from just doing something goofy to performing an act of defiance. Reviewing this movie lost me the respect of some other creators, so I want you all to know how brave I am. But you have yet to see the extent of my courage. Solar Sands and I sat down to watch Son of the Mask together, as, comedies are often best enjoyed with company. I actually think that we watched this on the first night that he was my roommate, so I really gave him the real Kino welcome.
What are you doing?
Neither of us knew what we were getting into. What we witnessed was a bizarre fever dream about fatherhood. The film follows Tim Avery, an average Joe who works as a mascot at an animation company, but he has dreams of becoming an animator. I guess that links this film to Freddy Got Fingered. His stuff just isn't that good, and he's a bit of a beta male. He has no confidence in himself, and he's unwilling to put himself out there. His troubles pile on as his wife wants kids, meaning that he's going to have to step up and secure a better position if he wants to support a family. Well, his luck changes as his dog finds Loki's mask. Avery decides to wear that mask to his company's Halloween party. Insanity ensues.
Don't you just love Halloween?
He turns the party around, getting everyone to dance and boogie and have a great time.
This is the part where you boogie. This is the part where you dance.
The higher-ups believe that he's playing as an original character, so they promote him the next day. While he had the mask on, though, he slept with his wife, and little did he know, but little mask sperms fertilized his wife's egg. I'm not joking. After that, the dog hides the mask, so Avery can't wear it for inspiration. He tries to pitch cartoons of the mask, but that spark is gone. Soon enough, his baby is born, and now he has to juggle being a dad while also trying to maintain his job. This job is difficult for anybody, but it's made exponentially more difficult for Tim Avery because his baby is imbued with the spirit and powers of Loki. His wife then leaves for a business trip right as he needs to get important work done for his job. So now he's single parenting a devil child.
You're doing great. But come on, say dada. Dada?
Mother. There are a few main conflicts in this movie. Loki, the prodigal son of Odin, sets out to find and recover the mask and the baby. The dog Otis wants to get rid of the baby by killing him, I think, because he doesn't like how Tim has stopped paying attention to Otis after Tim's son was born. The baby wants Tim out of the house, so he devises a plan to gaslight his own dad until his dad has a psychotic break and ends up in the loony bin. Yes, Son of the Mask is about a demigod child trying to place his mortal father in an insane asylum.
Do it. Stick to it!
The baby learns his tricks from TV. He replicates the cartoons and various Looney Tunes he watches on television. What the film morphs into is a sort of live-action Looney Tune. It's not all live-action though. I mean, there are some actually pretty neat animated segments in there. It all culminates in a standoff between Loki and Tim Avery, who both believe the baby to be theirs. To spoil it a bit, it has a happy ending, and the film's message is one about forgiveness and understanding of family members. Tim and his son learn to get along and love each other, and Loki finds redemption, and as a result, he repairs his own relationship with Odin. If I had to describe Son of the Mask, I'd say it's like if Eraserhead and Looney Tunes got together and had a baby, but one with a happy ending and I guess made for kids. It's a thoroughly bizarre film, and the 2004 CGI just adds to its uncanniness. It's easy to think that the CGI detracts from the film, but I think that it adds to the overall fever dream feel. It's a nightmare movie, but a nightmare movie that did make me laugh quite a bit. Sometimes I laughed because sections were genuinely funny, and sometimes I laughed because I couldn't believe how weird the movie was. All you Capeshit fans say that Hiddleston's your canon Loki. But you know who's my canon Loki? Alan Cumming.
I'm here to unclog your throne.
Before I forget, there's a subplot in which Otis wants to seduce the neighbor's dog. He dons the mask and throws a full-on romantic dinner while the soundtrack aptly plays Puppy Love. I think that what hampered this movie on its release was its connection to the Jim Carrey version of The Mask. Son of the Mask is a legacy sequel that has almost nothing to do with the original and doesn't star any of the same actors. It also released 11 years after The Mask, meaning that the hype for any other Mask-related films was long dead, and The Mask wasn't old enough to be resurrected for nostalgia purposes. The decision to have the main comedic character be a CGI baby and not a famous comedian like Jim Carrey also rubbed people the wrong way. Also, Carrey's rendition of The Mask featured his famous rubbery face. He could contort his face in all sorts of silly ways. Contrasting that, Kennedy's interpretation of The Mask is a bit more, terrifying. His face is way less flexible, and in many shots he's got these dead eyes behind the green mask. He feels less goofy and more sinister. The other major issue with this film comes when you ask the question, who is this made for? It feels like a children's film, but if I can give a brief anecdote right now, my friend tried to show his kids and their friends this movie recently, and it just terrified them. The themes surround the anxieties of becoming a father, with Tim Avery's worst nightmares coming to life.
Maybe I am just going crazy. Maybe I am just going.
The only major arc that I can see appealing to the kids is the arc of Tim's dog Otis, who initially resents the newest member of the family because he's now receiving less attention, but he grows to love his human, brother? Young master? That all being said, I find it fascinating, and I kind of like the movie. I went into this film thinking that I would hate it, but I didn't. I like the fact that it's so uncanny and sometimes horrifying. I also think that the camera work, cinematography, and production design are all interesting and, dare I say, good. The way this movie was filmed is much more vibrant than most kids' films or just most films today. The animated sequences are all well done and pretty fun. On the technical side of things, they really swung for the fences. I have a lot more respect for a film that attempts to be as wild and as inventive as this one and misses, than a movie that settles for pure mediocrity. Let's see what some of the critics said. Baltimore Sun. Doing a sequel to The Mask without Jim Carrey sounds like a really bad idea. As Son of the Mask proves, it is. TV Guide. Smokin'. Hardly. This sequel to the 1994 Jim Carrey flick The Mask should have been snuffed out in the drawing room. New York Daily News. What the filmmakers missed in assuming The Mask from the earlier film is that it was Jim Carrey's astonishing physical comedy that made the film a hit, not the animation. Yeah, the relationship with The Mask didn't help at all. But were the critics wrong about this one? Son of the Mask currently has a 20 on Metacritic and a 6% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's pretty rough, but I know a lot of people still hate it. But I'm gonna be brave. Braver than anyone else on this side of YouTube. I'm going mask off and saying that I don't think it's that bad. It's flawed, of course, but I like the flaws. Every time I watch this movie, I can't believe that it actually got made. Is it so bad it's good, or is it just good? I don't know. Watching this film is like watching a strange parallel universes version of a comedy film, as if in 2005 our realities touched for a short amount of time, and what we have to show for it is this one movie. And also maybe Cat in the Hat.
Delicious cupcakes are just minutes away.
Did you just say minutes away? That's impossible!
You're not just wrong, you're stupid.
What I do know for certain is that the Son of the Mask memes, as forced as they might be, are just as confounding as the film. If you made it this far into the video and you're part of the Son of the Mask cult, comment ID'd down below.
ID?
No ID, no party.
All in all, Son of the Mask is the best movie ever made. Tim Avery is definitely not in the room with me, pointing a weirdly cartoonish gun at me. I am in no fear of my life, and I am saying all of this of my own volition. So there are the 5 poorly reviewed movies. Looking back on it, it seems like we got a mix of misunderstood films, movies that weren't great but received unjust harshness from critics, and movies that the critics were right about. What I hope you take away from this is that you should always keep an open mind when watching a film. Just because most critics hate it doesn't mean that you need to. And just because critics tell you that a movie is the best movie since Vertigo doesn't mean that you need to love or pretend to love the film. That being said, I will judge you if you like Dirty Love, but I'm also sure that you're judging me for not hating Son of the Mask. Look, it's fine to have opinions that go against the consensus. It's what keeps film discussion vibrant and allows for some movies to have the second chances they deserve. Are there any misunderstood movies that you would like for me to review in the next entry of the series? Leave your recommendations in the comments below, and feel free to send me lists of films you'd like to see me review on Twitter. As always, I've been the Kino Corner, and I will see you all in the next video.